Good evening and welcome to Eye to Eye. Kumar Mahabir is here. Kumar is a writer, an anthropologist, a cultural activist. Most of his work has centered around the cultural practices of the descendants of East Indian indenture in Trinidad and the Caribbean, and the influence and the contribution those practices have on the wider Caribbean civilization. He has a massive corpus of publications, books and magazines, as you can see on the table here, on various topics such as medicine, traditional cuisine, herbs, religious practices, and his two main magazines that he publishes, Diwali magazine and Indian Arrival Day magazine, which he's been publishing for the last 10 years. I am really honored to have Dr. Mahabir here tonight. Kumar, I want to start, to me, at the beginning, when I first met you some 35 years ago, yes, when you had published this book, wow, The Still Cry.
Yes.
Tell me the story of how you came about to do this book, and it sort of kicked you off in the rest of your career. What's the story behind the book?
Right. Well,
what is the book in the first place?
Okay, so the book is entitled The Still Cry. It's
Yeah.
Subtitled Personal Accounts of East Indians in Trinidad and Tobago During Indentureship.
Right.
It's basically a book on oral history of indentureship.
Right.
A lot has been written about indentureship, but these works have been based on archival records, right, and diaries and so on, written by a certain class of people, a certain race of people. But I thought we need to retell the story of indentureship from the victim's point of view.
Yes.
At that time, when I did this book, or I did the research in somewhere in 1980s,
Right,
there were still a few surviving ex-indented immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
I had to seek them out. They were in all parts of the country. So I was a teacher then, teaching at Toko Composite School.
Right.
And I would use my weekends and the school holidays to go in sometimes remote areas to find these people and do recordings of their narratives of indentureship. At that time, I didn't have access to a camcorder and so on. All I had was a
Right.
tape recorder,
Right.
a cassette
Right.
tape recorder and so on. So I recorded the stories, which I still have,
Right.
and I transcribed those who were very articulate, those survivors, and I've documented these. And since then...
But when you transcribe it, how much editing did you do?
Well, very little editing, because the survivors' native language was Bhojpuri.
Right.
Or
All
some
of
other,
them?
no,
Yeah.
not all of them.
Right.
Telugu and a host of dialects, but
Right.
and they could speak very little English. English was an acquired language,
Right.
but I had to let them tell me their story in English.
Right.
And so it's a kind of pidgin English.
Right.
And so I have documented their narrative, their stories in that format.
Yes, but the way you printed it and so on, it was almost, well, it was like poetry.
Yes,
Right.
because there was a rhythm, a kind of nuance. It's
Right.
it's beautiful language.
I think
listen
it
to
is.
that.
I think it was one of the most impressive books I have seen. I think it's still,
Yes,
that's why I'm
and-
starting with it.
Right,
But
and of
why
all
you
my
call-
books, it's cited the most.
But it has, you see, it doesn't just have the truth of the original informants, but it has something I think you put into it,
Yes,
which
yes,
is
yes.
almost poetry.
Right.
Why was it called A Still Cry? Where did you get that title?
I could barely recall, but it's a cry of pain, cry of a trauma, and this cry has never been documented, has never been recorded.
Right.
And so I came up with the title. I don't know how it
All right.
came about.
It's a very,
But
it's a very, it's a title that holds you.
Yes.
I'd like you just to read a little piece of it so people get the flavor of the richness of it.
Right.
So we get an idea of it.
Okay, so let's see where I'll just pick a section randomly. So these people talk about their troubles and trials that awaited them in the new land. They were coming to Trinidad.
Right.
And once they arrived here, they adapted to the new environment, and they got married, some of them, and they had families, and they decided to make Trinidad their home.
Right.
Very few of them returned to India. and it is with a sense of finality that they accepted the new environment.
Right.
So one of the storytellers, one of the survivors, said to me, all are Michiran born here. All are them married here. All are them the same place. I plantam rice, plantam damadol, plantam okro, oking the estate, minam the cow, rentam land. Some fella going before the 5-year India, some fella working 10-year going India. If a Chauhan meet my Jahaji, who is a shipmate, anyone, I'd say, come go, I give you place. Come plant rice and thing, come plant cane. In India, one place all the Jahaji meeting. You living same country, you living same place. If you free today, still work in the estate. Anyway going, had to work. Everything have here, children have here. India no have nothing. All the family day, all the friend they here, all the family they here. Plenty people going, coming back, 2 at a time.
Right, really nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I have it still recorded.
Right.
With all the richness of the nuances of the dialect or the pidgin. And I hope someday to put this on a CD.
On a CD.
Right.
Well, that shouldn't be hard to do.
No, it shouldn't be hard to do.
Not these days.
With technology,
right, yeah.
just editing and so on.
Another interesting thing about this book, though, I find, is it's a real Trinidadian story in the sense that your first publisher, your first godfather here was Selwyn Kajo.
Yes, yes.
Which nowadays sounds very ironic.
Yes, yes.
Tell me how he got interested. What was he like as your sort of literary godfather here to bring this out?
Right, right. So this book was published in about 1985. I mean, I was quite young then, and writing and trying to get published everywhere.
Right.
At that time, there was no internet in existence, so you had to look for hard copy publications. And I would have sent extracts of this piece to some newspaper or newsletter, and he would have seen it.
Right.
And he then contacted me and asked me if I have more of it.
Right.
And then I said, yes, it's based on the recorded interviews with these survivors. He was very fascinated by it, fascinated more so on the language,
Right.
because this work has a value. The value is based on the content as well as the language, so the form as well as content, the way the story is told as well as what is told.
Right.
So he contacted me, he came at my home and so on. He asked me if I would like to publish it in book form. I readily agreed, being young and so on. I have never published a book at that time, so I gave him the manuscript and he published it, and then we had a book launch at UE, and the book ever since has been well cited.
Right.
Even
He has a very good forward as well.
Yes, very good forward.
Very,
yes,
very
yes.
interesting. And I think why I say it's a Trinidadian story is that we like to have all these sort of stereotypes about people.
Yes, yes.
Because of what they may say or may be portrayed in the media.
Right.
But when it comes down to it,
Yes.
they don't hold up.
Right.
You know, this is somebody who most people say is African nationalist or something like
Yes,
that.
yes.
And he gave you the start.
Yes,
And
he gave me the start.
It is such, and it's a book of such integrity.
Right, right.
That I think both of you have to be really proud of it.
Yes,
and I
yes,
think
yes.
it just stands up for that.
Right.
And I still hold that.
Yes.
As whenever I think of Kumar, I say, still cry.
Yes, yes, this is my landmark publication. And actually, I was pleasantly surprised one day. There was a conference, a Caribbean conference. It was held in Trinidad, but international conference that was held at Parks Guest House in Mount St. Benedict. And a lady presented an entire academic research paper on this book.
Right.
Yes.
It is very important. And what it did also was, I don't know if it had an influence, but certainly it was the first of its kind of people recording stories and folk legends of the indentured population or the survivors and descendants. For example, Ken Parmasad's Salt and Roti, and various things like that. And then you have also, of course, published on folk tales and so on.
Yes.
So
it's part of the oral tradition.
The oral tradition.
And this falls in the genre of the slave narratives.
Yes.
Right? But I probably want to tell you that I'm doing an extended piece to this.
Right.
So I am kind of reworking it.
Okay.
Adding more voices and having a lot more annotations. So what I'm doing, still transcribing some of these.
Then you need to publish a CD and put it in the book.
Yes, that's true. Certainly.
But don't lose the poetry.
No, not at all. Not at all. So I want to get the original voice.
Right.
Yeah. Telling the stories.
Yes.
So what I want to do is to have an extract of the original voice of these survivors, who, by the way, have all passed away.
Right.
And then I want to transcribe that or translate that in standard English for an international audience.
All right.
And then I want to have a commentary at the bottom.
Right.
And then probably a fourth segment is to kind of compare what they say to what has been documented.
Okay.
Right? So I have the idea of the format already, but it takes time, and we have a million projects going.
Well, I know everybody has a million projects coming.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break now.
Okay.
And we'll be right back with Kumar on Eye to Eye. Stay tuned.
I hear prayer. Them making noise. Hear them bawling like if somebody killing. That no prayer. Prayer is different thing. Prayer is different thing. Pray the God. Only one God I have. This earth. Me mama. Who make me. That is my God. That is my God.
Welcome back to Eye with Kumar Mahabir. Kumar, following up from this still cry, which is probably your still cry as much as ours and much as of the indentured survivors, where did you get this passion from? Where do you think, what's the root of your passion for the recording of these practices and the recording of the East Indian indentured survive?
Well, it probably has to do with the environment in which I grew up. I grew up in a place called Plamitan, a town close to San Grande, near to Manzalina, also near to Biche. It's on the margins of the Nariva swamp. Right. And I grew up at a time when there was no electricity, no pipe-borne water. The school was about 2.5 miles away. We had to walk. I grew up in the countryside. So there was no television then. Of course, we had a radio, and the neighbors would come to listen to the news and so on. It was a radio this size that operated with a motor car battery. Okay. And so what do you do in your spare time? But turn to books. So books then represented a window to the outside world. And our family was in the habit of reading. So we would have a book and we would share it, members of the family. Okay. And so I developed that love for reading because of the isolation, I think.
What was your father doing?
My father was a shopkeeper. Right. We had a grocery and a liquor store. Right. We had a cocoa and coffee estate. Right. Most people who see me and know me think that I am from South. Right. They're a stereotype of the Indian, Central and South, and probably having grown up on the sugarcane estate, but that is foreign to me. Yes. I grew up in cocoa and coffee and citrus estate. Right. So I think it's the isolation and being in that environment at that time, and surrounded by all this greenery. But a lot of people
lived in those places, and at that time, not everyone got this passion to record their people and put it out and analyze it and I mean chase it down. I mean, you haven't done this out of this is a huge corpus,
All right, so it probably has to do also with the fact that we were kind of middle class in the village that I grew up. Right. And most of my schoolmates, most of my neighbors boys my age would probably go fishing
Right.
and drinking and so on in the countryside. You know, we have very little recreation. And my parents would have debarred me from actually mixing
Right.
because they didn't want me to become a fisherman.
All right.
They didn't want me to go catching counts or smoking marijuana.
Right.
So they insulated me from the wider society. I would have interaction with boys my age, but they would kind of emphasize that we need to get an education
Right.
to get out of
Your father
this
was
estate.
educated in some way?
My father, at that time, you know, my father died when he was 90 years old. Very healthy, but very active. And no, they would have, at that time, in their age, they would have hardly gone beyond primary school.
Right.
But they placed
But he
value
read.
on education.
Right.
Yes, and they would buy...
What kind of books they would be reading in the family?
They would have an occasional novel or so. The name fails me now, but they would have occasional novel. Not too many books around. One book probably for the year,
Yes.
but being circulated,
Right.
and we will discuss it.
Okay.
But they place value on education. They said, you know, they don't want us to go to have a career planting rice or watermelon.
But still, you have the value of education and so on, but to lay your life for the sort of thing you've laid your life, you must have got this bug from somewhere. I mean,
right?
From a teacher, from just seeing people and saying, "I want to record." Why do you feel you have to record this? What's your mission? What's your...
Well, it was to document my environment too, because I was in the countryside, and the countryside up to now is still marginalized, even in the mainstream media. All the television houses are based in Port of Spain. We are here talking in St. James. Major newspaper offices are in Port of Spain. The countryside is still marginalized, and people are still sidelined, and that environment is, even up to date, not really captured.
Right.
I mean, the news happens in Port of Spain, right? And I thought, even then, I thought that I need to document that world, to analyze it.
So it's just something in you.
It.
You just felt you had to document things.
Yes, I had to document it, and particularly if you look at the theme running through all of these books.
The herbal stuff, the traditional medicine,
on the oral tradition,
Right.
that folk tradition,
Right.
and even up to this day, I don't think we are placing much value on the elderly, the older heads, those old folks in the society, in the country. They are passing away day by day, and nobody's going to do interviews with them and recording their wisdom. And this is very sad. That
what effect do you think that has on young people when we don't record these things?
Well, they're really losing out big time, because the society today is much in social media. For instance, my children, 20 and 21 years old, they are not interested in going to the countryside or anywhere else. They want to go to the mall. So it's a mall generation, a mall culture.
And then they're always on their Blackberries.
Oh yes. So I'd probably like to admit that my children live with me, but I hardly see them, because as soon as they get home, they're onto the computer and they're into Facebook.
Yes.
Right, so they come out only when they want to eat something, and I see them in the kitchen.
I have exactly the same situation, and I'm always surprised that, you know, with the concerns that we have, and the passion that we have, and the way we've lived our lives, and our kids sort of, don't worry with that.
Yes.
They don't want to see. They don't want to starve like their parents.
No.
They want to. They want to go out and make a life for themselves.
Yes, they don't want to go anywhere else. I want to take them to the countryside. I want to introduce them to family and so on. No, they want to go to the mall. They want to go to the movies. They want to go to the restaurant and probably party. And that's their life.
Okay. Yeah. Meanwhile, I want to sort of highlight some of the things. You have the continued the Caribbean Indian folk tales, which is this, how much have you captured the actual storyteller? How much have you put into it, your own artistry into this? Right.
So this again is a work like Ken Parmesan had done on Sultan Roti. It's a kind of follow-up.
Sort of shape it. You get the original thing and then shape it.
Right. But his work is centered on Trinidad. This is Caribbean. So I have traveled to St. Vincent, Grenada, Guyana, and so on. and I've documented these stories, like the Anansi stories.
Yes.
So this is a counterpart and a complement to the Anansi stories, drawing from the African tradition.
Right.
So these are stories from the Indian tradition.
Right.
And in the new edition of this book, I want to include stories from Belize. I traveled to Belize last year, and I've been very fortunate to document on videotape too some of these descendants of East Indian immigrants telling me the stories. So I have to include that in a revised edition.
Right.
But again, this is different to Palmersad's book because I have told the stories there in the original dialect. And for each story, there's a standard English version.
Okay.
In addition to having two versions of each folk tale, I have questions at the back. So it can be used as a teaching resource. Teachers can use it in schools at the high school and primary level as a teaching tool.
Your Caribbean East Indian recipes, my wife is a big fan of this book.
Oh,
That's why I got a new edition. You have a new edition.
This is the new edition.
Right? Right, so I got a new one for her because she's found them very useful. You do the cooking yourself?
Well, it's a family project, really.
Right.
It's as you see, my wife's name is on the cover as a joint author, but it's really a family project, an extended family project.
So you take the recipes and you try them out yourself?
Yes, everyone has been kitchen tested and tried and so on, and we measured everything, and when it was cooked to perfection, then we did the documentation.
Right.
Because in traditional cooking, you just say, put a little bit of that and a touch of that and a handful of that.
And then chunk it.
Yes, right?
Right.
But no, it's scientifically done.
Yes.
And what I've done in all of my publications is to consult classics, right? So I spend a lot of money buying, like if I have to write recipe books all over the world.
Right.
I look at the format, so it's reader friendly.
Right, right.
And it's down to precision. And what I also do, before I publish anything, I send it to proofreaders and editors and so on. You know,
no, I mean
these are flawless.
These are.
But it's a bestseller. It's selling all the time. This is a new edition, and actually I've done a reprint. It was published in 1990 or something like that.
No, it's really important stuff because, as you say, you've tested everything.
And it's traditional.
They're good photographs and everything like that to show what they should look like.
Right.
And it's traditional, as they say.
But on the point of photographs, it's unfortunate that I have been doing photography since like 1980.
Right.
But I use a traditional type of camera with negatives and so on.
Right.
So I have boxes of photographs, but then I have to go and reshoot everything because we are into the digital media now. So if you want good reproduction, you have to get a digital photograph.
Yes.
So I have to kind of start from the beginning.
I mean, you can scan your photographs and so on, your negatives.
But still, you don't get that sharpness.
I have a dictionary of common Trinidad Hindi as well.
Yes.
This must do quite well as well.
Yes, actually it's out of print.
And it's well, and you have little illustrations
and so on. And,
because I think, all Trinidadians should
have this on their bookshelf. Well. It sells well because it's a Trinidad publication. It's common Trinidad Hindi. And it has to be revised because there are words that we use that are not in there. So every work needs revision, and updating and so on. But it takes time.
You have done a lot of work in the medical field as well, because I think at one time you even were assistant lecturer at Mount Hope as well.
Right.
Using the traditional thing, you did research on traditional midwifery.
Right, but actually my PhD thesis, which I am looking at and formatting it for publication soon. Let me keep my fingers crossed so that it should be out by March. It's going to be published. My PhD thesis is based on traditional medicine.
Right.
I did my PhD at University of Florida in 1997, and the dissertation is based on traditional medicine with special focus on the women who have postnatal women who have just given birth. So. I got permission to go on the postnatal ward at Mount Hope Women's Hospital, and I spent many weeks there interviewing the women who were there, and then I got a consent and I followed them home. I did further interviews and observation and so on. So the entire book is on traditional medicine. It provides some new and fascinating
Is
information.
it East Indian traditional
No,
medicine?
that book is across.
Everything. We're going to have to take another break.
Okay.
So we'll be right back with Kumar in a minute, so stay with us. Welcome back to Eye to Eye with Kumar Mahabir. Let's follow up a little bit more on this medical thing, because you spend a lot of time on traditional herbs and practices.
Yes.
I see even one of your papers was on the practice of massage on on babies and things like that.
Right.
What's your interest in the medicine? And as you say, it's not just Indian stuff. It is Trinidadian or traditional of all cultures.
Right. So drawing upon the earlier point that I had made about taking photographs with a digital camera now, just last weekend I had to revisit a traditional healer who lives in Aranguez. Again, we have the notion that a lot of these traditional practices occur only in the countryside, but that's not necessarily so. Anything you're looking for in a traditional way, in 4 months would tell you have to go to the countryside, go Pinal, go Barakpur, but that's not necessarily so. Sometimes it's right in your doorstep, probably in St. James,
of course.
in Paul's Bay, in San Juan.
I remember doing a feature in the original Gael on a guy in Bossier.
Oh, yes. Old sugarcane estate.
Yeah, and he worked in St. James as well.
Right.
Massage and that sort of thing.
Yes. So last weekend I had to revisit a traditional healer who jarrays jaundice, who treats jaundice. And there is the common belief by the vast majority of people in Trinidad and Tobago that if you are afflicted with jaundice, it doesn't make sense going to the doctor or the hospital or the clinic. You have to go to a traditional healer. So I revisited this woman there, and she has a terrier, a brass plate, and a doob grass and mustard oil, and she chants her mantras and so on. She places the plate on your head as a patient, and she would stir the mustard oil, and then it would change color. So there is the belief that it would pull that yellow, right. So I went there and I did the photographs again. What is interesting, I also visited a man who does massage. He cracks joints and sprains and so on. And what's interesting is that every 5 minutes there is somebody coming in for treatments. Every 5 minutes. So in my book that is soon to be published, there is a section entitled The Hidden Healthcare System. Hidden Healthcare System. It's not documented, it's not known. These healers do not advertise their services, but they are being patronized by people of all races and all religious groups, and all people come from far and wide. What is unfortunate though is that these people are dying and taking away that tradition with them. Because
are they having apprentices? They don't have any.
Hardly.
Yeah, young people are not into that.
Are not into that, but it's a lucrative profession.
Yes.
Because I mean, you have a lot of people going to university and getting degrees now, and they can't find jobs. So they should probably apprentice themselves and learn this craft of cracking and rubbing sprains and so on, and jarring jaundice.
Yes. What does jarre mean?
It means treating or healing.
Right.
So and then so I had done a research paper on treating or jarring jaundice, and then the thesis, which is soon to be turned into book form, is based on these culture-specific illnesses. People in Trinidad and Tobago, regardless of race or religion and so on, believe that there are certain dislocations in the body, like Nara. Nara, Bouchet.
Bouchet, yes. Go bust your Bouchet, or your Bouchet gonna drop.
Right. And for little babies, it's Hasuli. You know, you hold the baby carelessly and so on, and something with the neck and so on. A little dislocation, and the baby would cry endlessly without any apparent reason. The baby would not take any milk and so on. So you have to take the child to be massaged by these women. Again, they're few and far between, and they're disappearing. So we need to document that folk medical tradition. Is very important.
Yes.
And it has to be done.
But you're one of the only people doing this.
I think
Do
so.
you,
I
you
think
don't
so.
have new anthropology students doing some of this work?
Well, there's into something called cultural studies.
Yes.
Again, which focuses more on the mall culture, the modern culture. Nobody wants to go in the countryside and look for these old people and talk to them and tap their knowledge and so on, all of these remedies. And they work. For instance, right now as we speak, you know, there's a virus going around, spreading. Almost every other person has been afflicted with a virus. The symptoms are cough and cold and so on. Once one person in the house gets the virus, it spreads because it's kind of airborne. You cough, you sneeze and so on, you don't wash your hands, you get a virus. So in our household, for instance, members of the family were afflicted with the virus. And my wife, for instance, went to the doctor, we went to the pharmacy, we tried everything, nothing works. So then we had to hark back to the traditional healing practices. So what I have concocted, based on the oral tradition, it's not my invention, is that you get a glass like this, and you pour some honey, squeeze 2 limes, black pepper, salt, and a dash of puncheon rum, white puncheon rum. And you take that on an empty stomach 2 or 3 times per day, and in one day the virus goes. I still have the tail end of it. That's probably why my voice is a little changed. But it works. So again, for a lot of illnesses, instead of going to the doctor and the hospital and so on, spending money, we can use local remedies. Yes. And again, we are using local resources because all of these tablets and pills and medication, again, are bought from abroad, and we are spending valuable money. Our income is going abroad.
I'm not going to ask you about all these people who are selling herbal remedies all over the place and making a good bit of money.
Well, yeah, I am skeptical about that.
I am also.
I am skeptical about that. I wouldn't recommend that.
Because a lot of that is coming from away too.
Yes, it's coming away, but there are these herbalists, they have all kind of mixtures and so on. I am very skeptical. These things may have side effects. Exactly. I will go with the traditional, you talk to an old man and an old lady, yes, and you do that. But when you bottle these things, I mean, what are the preservatives to keep that thing? You mix these things.
Kumar, you also have done a lot of work on comparative religion and things like that, and the Hindu, the aspects of Hindu and Orisha, and even Catholic, the relationship between the Catholic and sort of syncretism between Hindu and Catholic, like Sipare, Maya, and the Kali, and things like that. Talk a little bit about that.
Right, so I consider myself to be a true anthropologist, and anthropologists essentially study other cultures. I mean, this is the classic definition of anthropology. I mean, when you look at National Geographic and Travel Channel and Discovery and so on, you see these anthropologists going to study other people, other tribes and so on in the jungle and so on. So as an anthropologist studying my own culture and studying the society in which I live, I too have studied other cultures. So I have done studies on the Orisha, which we know as a Shango, and I've looked at the syncretic kind of dynamics. There are a lot of striking similarities between Hinduism and the Orisha movement, which is unique to Trinidad. I have studied the La Divina, the Sipari Mai event on Good Friday, when a lot of Hindus go and they literally take over the Catholic Church. Space is given to them, and they have constructed the Virgin Mary as Mother Kali and so on. They make offerings, candles, sweet oil, coins, and so on. And it's almost as if they're doing a puja. If you look at the rituals and so on, they would make these gestures. And I've also done research on carnival, particularly stick fight, because East Indians brought their old tradition of stick fighting called the gatka, which has been adapted over time. And I still want to do further research on the borokit.
Right, of course.
Again,
which originated out of East Indians.
Not really, not really. But somehow Indians have appropriated it, and the jab.
But I have seen that in India.
Yes,
borokit.
Well, so too, you see, again, we have to do cross-cultural research. We can't confine ourselves to doing research on our own culture and our own country and so on. For instance, this, the walking on stilts for carnival, how is that called?
The Mokojambi.
Mokojambi. We would think that Mokojambis, or the art of walking on stilts, is something of African tradition. but they are photographs of that which I have seen in India.
I think all
So it's-
cultures have them.
right,
They are
right.
stilt
So
walkers in one
yes.
way or the other. Yeah.
Right.
But I have seen it in African carnival parades also.
Exactly. But what's interesting, there are two forms of carnival that I'd like to do further research. I have documented that already, and I've published on it. One is Jab Jab, again, which has been appropriated by Indians,
Right.
particularly in Cuba.
Yes, yes.
Right, a family day.
Yeah, why is that?
This I have to explore.
Yes.
You know.
Because it's one of the only manifestations of Jab Jab left
Yes,
in our
that's-
carnival.
that's
It's
true.
that family.
Yes, yes.
Wearing the traditional satin
with the whip and
with the
so
colors
on.
and
Yes,
with the whip
yes,
and,
yes,
and the
yes.
headgear.
You're right.
And
And it's a family tradition, so it was
Right.
handed down.
right.
And then the Borokeet dance, or the horse dance. I
Right.
think it's called by other names too.
Right.
Again,
Why you say it wasn't an Indian thing? Because I remember Carla Chang saying it it came out of an Indian
because
thing.
I think I've read elsewhere. It's
Yeah.
oh yes, yes. If you Google thing, you'll see it appearing a number of places.
Okay, yeah.
Right. Good for internet now.
But what
so
but-
coming back to the point,
yeah.
but the last custodian of this Borokeet
Yes.
dance, this horse dance, this donkey dance, it resides in a family that is in Pinal. It's a
Right.
very old man. He has his children carrying on that tradition. And we have to do research, and we have to document that, and we have to pass on that tradition so that it doesn't die.
Tell me something a little bit. Oh, I think we have to take a break now. We'll come right back. One more minute. Stay with us, please. Welcome back to Eye to Eye with Kumar Mahabir. All right, Kumar, we're talking about the way in which you have to do all this comparative research with all the different influences and stuff we have here. You also done a lot of work in the Caribbean on Indian populations in the Caribbean,
yes.
but also how do you see you just edited a book, I think, on
Yes,
on
diaspora.
Indian diaspora in the Caribbean.
Yes.
How would you? What's your vision? How do you see the Indian contribution to Caribbean?
Right. So we are unique in Trinidad. I'm grateful. I feel I'm blessed that I've been born in this society, a multi-ethnic, multiracial society. We have carnival, we have calypso, we have the pan. We have
You've done some work on Hussein as well.
I've done some work on Hussein.
Yeah.
And we are unique here because we have Hussein. Guyana doesn't have Hussein. Suriname doesn't have Hussein. Hussein exists only in Jamaica,
Right.
but at a smaller scale.
Right.
We have full-fledged Hussein commemoration, and in St. James, not in the countryside.
But isn't
it
there
is in Cedras.
In Cedras, yes.
Right, but no, we have the authentic.
Yes.
We have kept a lot of the traditions alive in St. James, urban area.
Right.
So we have Hussein in Trinidad.
Pagua.
We have Pagua, we have Diwali. Now, while we have carnival here, which is true, we have carnivals in a number of other countries, but we have Hussein here, which no other country observes. So we are really unique here, and I think we are fortunate. A lot of anthropologists, a lot of researchers are coming to Trinidad. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was interviewed by a guy of Chinese origins, a Chinese Trini or Trini Chinese, doing research on Paratha Roti.
Right.
He
Richard. Fang.
Richard Fang.
Yes, he's making this film on roti because comparing it with India.
Fascinating
Yeah,
guy because
yes.
I think he lectures at the university
in Toronto.
in Toronto
Yes.
and in India too.
Right, that's
producing
true.
these documentaries, and he's doing a mini documentary
Yes.
on Paratha Roti,
Yes.
which he thinks is unique.
Yes.
Again, we have invented the steel pan, but we've also invented doubles.
Yes.
And we are the only society that uses bandania
All
in the
right.
Caribbean, not even
Really?
Guyana. Yes, the Guyanese.
Well, for those who don't know Bandania, we're talking
Shadow
about
Benny.
Shadow Benny.
Shadow Benny.
Or, but it's a sort of Caribbean version of, what is the American one?
Yes,
They call it
cilantro.
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 Right,
Yes, so we use it in almost all our seasonings.
yes.
Right? And so we have invented a lot of things. Our brand of Diwali is unique. I mean, we have Pichkari and so on. We have put our stamp
So
on it.
getting back to the question of India and the Caribbean.
Yes.
What is your vision? What is your,
My
how do you see it?
Yes, my vision is that Indian culture be recognized because it's valuable, it's unique to Trinidad, and unique in the sense that it's what we practice here and the traditions that we have here, the celebrations that we observe. Often you can't even find it in Suriname or in Guyana that have large East Indian populations. So it should be recognized. It makes us richer as a society. We should celebrate it. We should give it all the support that it requires. It should go on the media. It should not be sidelined because it's unique. It came here 150 years ago. It's older than the steel band, a lot of the Indian tradition. So it should be celebrated. And it should not be marginalized. It should be given its due place.
Right.
And it should be given.
What is its due place?
Due place, okay, let's say you have, too often you have a concert, a cultural show representing Trinidad and Tobago, which is, Trinidad and Tobago is multi-ethnic, multiracial. But you have a token tassa performance and a token dance. So out of, let's say, 15 cultural items, you have 2 Indian items. And I mean, there's been a lot of hue and cry about that. So I'm saying there need to be more space and more recognition given to East Indian culture.
But comparing, I was thinking of it today, I was comparing now to 1985 when we first met.
Yes.
The space has changed.
Proportionately, no, not really. Check the proportion, do the calculations. Check how many cultural performances are there in a show. It's still the token tassa.
I would agree with you the cultural thing, but we're talking social, political, everything.
Oh,
like
yes,
that.
yes, certainly.
I agree. The cultural thing has not changed.
Has not changed.
You still get just the token dance.
Yes, yes.
The Indian dance.
Right. And
the Shiv Shakti.
Right.
And you bring a tassa. Though the tassa is probably 1985. It wasn't as big as it is now.
Right.
But yeah, there are other things. I agree. On the cultural stage, we're still grasping, even though chutney.
Yes.
Since 1985, I mean, it more or less started around that time.
Yes, and it has grown.
And it has grown, and now at carnival time, it's big.
Right.
And
it's a segment in the competition.
Carnival celebrations. You have its own competitions and all that. And you have your soca raga and all these sorts of things happening. So I think in the carnival arena, the space has certainly changed.
Yes.
But I agree with you. They're sort of official cultural performance. They're still wondering what Indian we could put besides the little dance or the tassa.
Right.
You know?
But you see, again, a lot is to be blamed on the Indian promoters and the Indian activists too. And the researchers, generally across the board. People are still doing research on Calypso, which is good and which is needed, but few people are doing research on other Indian cultural traditions, which is where I come in, and which makes my work even bigger. The task is great. I am supervising a student from UWI who is doing, Sean Smart, by the way, who is non-Hindu or non-Indian. He's doing a master's thesis on Biraha, see, which has never really been properly researched. Biraha is the Indian counterpart to the extempo, the Calypso, where these singers...
A bit like what Ravi Ji has also been doing with Pichkari and so on.
Pichkari. But again, Pichkari is a modern invention, right? It's Ravi Ji's invention. But Biraha has come a long way over generations. And nobody has properly analyzed and researched and documented the Biraha tradition.
Is that anything... we've done some, what they call... table drumming.
Oh yes, well, Prem Singh.
Is that a bit of Bihar in that? Because they seem to improvise, or are they just chanting?
Well, that's kind of Ramshap.
I know it's Ramshap, but they're singing on top of it.
Yes, they sing on top of it.
Yeah.
Right, but
extempo has long been a Ramshap thing too. Eh?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, but so Prem Singh has been around, and he's trying in his own way every Indian arrival day to provide a forum. For instance, a couple of years ago, we had the mic competition, again, which is part of Indian tradition. There's so many aspects of Indian culture that has never been explored, never been documented, never been videotaped. and this is really sad.
Yes.
And apparently nobody's doing
You
it.
can't say you're not trying.
Yes, I'm trying, but I'm alone. How much
You
can
are
I
alone.
do? I have a million projects, and I'm sitting like others.
Well, we always have so many projects
Yes,
that I know we got dead before we finish most of
Right,
them.
right. So I'm trying to encourage people,
Yes.
Indians, non-Hindus, I'll give them all my support. I own a publishing company. I have a team of proofreaders and so on. I'll give all support for anybody who wants to do research on Indian culture. There's so many aspects that haven't even been touched.
Right, right.
Right? And
Well,
the list goes on and on.
I know that you were a presenter on Gael, the
Oh,
original
yes,
Gael
yes,
series for a while.
yes, yes.
And we did try to milk what we could out of you
Right,
in
right,
terms
right,
of getting
right.
these practices documented in some way.
So some people still remember me when we had that.
Well, I still show this. We still
yes,
show
yes,
it.
yes.
Yeah.
On a Thursday. It was the only television station.
Right. That's
on
the
a
only-
Thursday about 8 o'clock.
That's precisely
Yes,
what it
yes,
was. Yeah.
yes.
So we hope, we had hoped that the channel would become more like that. What we did in half an hour should be done all day, but we still have a far way to go with Gael. It's a lot of lack of resources still,
Right,
not putting. So the same cry, the still cry that
Yes,
you make now
yes.
about the mammoth task of trying to give the space
Yes.
to all the different cultural aspects, especially the East Indian culture,
Yes.
is something that that Gael still has only hardly touched
Yes, yes,
itself,
yes.
and I really wish we could do more. But again, you need the support. Talk to me a bit about what you're trying to do with the Diwali magazine.
Right. So I am chairman of Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center Company Limited.
Oh, that reminds me.
Yes.
More important,
Yes.
the museum.
Right.
Talk a bit about the museum.
Yes, so the museum, I am vice chairman of the museum. The museum has been, people have tried to set up museums, but these were private collections under their house and so on.
Rajni
Rajni had started that.
started one in the 80s.
Yes, again on their house,
yes.
kind of rotating museum.
Ramlakan, is that what
Yes,
it is?
Rajni Ramlakan.
Yeah.
But for the first time in Trinidad, I wouldn't say it's the only Indian Caribbean museum, because I visited Belize, and Belize has an East Indian Caribbean museum, surprisingly.
Wow.
I didn't know.
Well, I didn't even know they had a significant
Yes,
Indian
yes.
population.
Actually, the next magazine is Indians in the diaspora in the Guadeloupe,
Well, I know,
Belize, and Suriname.
I know the French Caribbean as well, but I didn't know Belize.
Yes, yeah. So actually, there's the East Indian conference that is coming up just after.
Quickly, 1 minute.
Yes.
Museum.
So the museum has been set up. It's open to the public, based in Waterloo, near the temple in the sea.
Okay, right.
It's open every day except a Monday and a Tuesday.
Yes.
Free to the public, and you have a guide there who would give you a tour in the museum.
And
it's
this
going
museum
great.
is of East Indian culture and
yes,
traditions.
Yes, so it's a specialized museum.
Right.
Like you have a maritime museum.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
nothing
Well, there's
segregationist about it
a
or
war
anything.
museum or something.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Right. So you have a police museum.
Okay, right.
Right. You have a Toco Heritage Museum. There are a lot of
Yes,
museums around.
right.
So
And Tobago as well.
Yes. So I'm trying to spearhead an organization that would coordinate all of these museums.
Okay, good. Right. Well, Kumar, we're running out of time.
Yes.
And it's been really great spending the hour with you.
Thank you.
We spent the hour with Kumar Mahabir and his children. And join us next week for another episode of Eye to Eye. Thank you.